Hi! A week ago, I released a puzzle game called Throw Rock. This was made in 1 week for a game jam, and I have a lot of things to say about it, so this video is going to be sort of a kind of postmortem, kind of devlog, just like talking about how the game was made and the entire story surrounding it. I'm probably going to do a few of these. I don't think everything I want to say about this will fit into one video. In terms of spoilers, if you haven't played the game yet and you're planning to, this might be a video to skip for a little bit because I will be going through a fair bit of it in detail. Not at the start, though, but we'll get there. Anyway, so, yeah. So game looks like this. It's a puzzle game that you walk around, pick up rocks, put them down, throw them, and that's sort of the main, the core mechanic of it. So it's a, stepping around, sort of Sokoban-like sort of thing, but instead of pushing blocks, you throw rocks. Anyway, so I have a bunch of stuff to say. We'll look at the game in some more detail in a bit. So that's a quick little look at what the game looks like. So context surrounding this. For the last few years, I've been working on a game called Foresight Fight and put up a number of devlogs for it here on this YouTube channel. And that's a big multi-year project, which I wanted to be sort of a big deal game release for me. And I've released a few games in the past, but like what it meant to me to release a game before was just to make a little freeware thing for like a game jam or something like that and just upload it on my website and tell a few friends about it. So that was my experience with releasing games in the past. For Foresight Fight, I wanted to do something a little more, official. Like, it's something that I would imagine selling for money potentially and having much higher standards for, what sort of thing it is. Anyway, so basically I wanted to have something in between now and when I want to release that monstrosity of a project, just to get some practice for what it means to me today to release a game, or at least sort of something to bridge the gap in between. So this kind of became that project. I tried a few other small projects just to accomplish this goal, but they always ended up too large. I showed a couple of other prototypes. There was that raccoon adventure game. There's this one called Order of the Moon. I'm still hoping to work on those, but neither of them were the appropriate size. Anyway, so this kind of ended up filling that role. So how this came about, I am a member of a Discord server called Thinky Puzzle Games, which has a whole bunch of people in it who enjoy this sort of game, stepping around. Sokoban-likes are very common there, but just all sorts of different types of puzzle game. And they were running a game jam, which ran for 1 week. This would have been... Okay, this calendar here. I guess it was July 2022 from the... Wait, today's the 14th? Okay, well, when you see this, I guess it'll be the 15th probably. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting my dates mixed up. So I guess it was the 8th when it ended. So it started on, July 1st. That sounds right. So yeah, it ran for a week. The idea was not to spend more than 48 hours actually working on the game. What that means is kind of up to interpretation. I interpreted it literally. Just like 48 hours of work time was my approximate time limit to shoot for. And I think I stayed within that. My time tracking tells me I spent 26 hours total focused working on this game, but that's using a methodology that will very much underestimate how much I did. So multiply that by, 1.5 or so maybe. So yeah, I put in a lot of time in this. But yeah, 1 week calendar time was all I had for it. So other reasons. So this just kind of came at the perfect time for me. So I put up some devlogs for Foresight Fight. But also, more recently, I'd been working on some tool programming. So I have this little audio generator program, which I can play with various different things, make sound effects with it. And I have a graphic editor here, which was also for making tiles and stuff. Okay, so I guess game spoilers have started. Maybe I'll blur that out just in case anybody really doesn't want to see it. But yeah, so the tile map for the game was made in this program here. And yeah, we'll go through this in a little bit more detail in a moment. But yeah, let me show just a little bit more of the game, just in case people watching this haven't seen it, to give some context. So, pick up rock, throw rock, and goal in each level is to get to the exit stairs here. So, this is the intro level. It has a few various tips here. A lot of people did not find the settings menu at all, so I kept adding more and more hint scrolls here just to kind of point everybody in the right direction. Yeah, so this and a lot of other levels went through several different iterations. This little cursor I'm pointing with is a pretty new thing. Anyway, yeah, so been making little updates here and there to the game as things happen. So yeah, intro level has a couple of very basic puzzles in it. Anyway, have to get to the stairs. So, here's an obstacle, here's a mechanism, you can mouse over them to see the wiring, kind of like Drod style. So yeah, plates will show the doors they toggle, doors will show the plates that toggle them, and the colors are meaningful, of course. Those are trapdoors. They'll fall when I'm carrying a rock, and I do need both rocks across here to hold these both down at the same time. And then there's this obstacle here. So, that needs to be toggled while I'm standing here. And how do you do that? You throw a rock at it. Originally, this level was much, much harder, and a number of people got stuck on it, so this went through a few revisions, even post-release. It used to be that what you had to do was throw a rock from here to here, then quickly grab a rock from here. That would land on a plate that would toggle both of these doors at once, and you'd be able to get through. But that was a bit much for an intro level. So here you just do that, wait, and that's the level. Anyway, yeah, so it kind of goes on from there. This one teaches about the wait button, etc., and there are 16 levels in total. So yeah, again, I'll go through the levels in more detail at some point, but that's enough to give an overview of the game. So, inspirations for this. When the jam was starting, originally I was thinking I wanted to do something kind of Bean and Nothingness-like. So that's a puzzle game I've been playing lately that's a whole lot of fun. This kind of sort of pun name came to me. I was going to call this Seeds or Something. So, seed instead of beans, or instead of and, something instead of nothingness. I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. And then, oh shoot, I need to go dig up a JPEG because I want to show a screenshot of something. 1 second. Here we go, this is it. It's not a JPEG though, it's a ping. Anyway, so I had a dream at one point, a couple of months ago, about a video game that looked like this. And this was my attempt to recreate that using my tile editor. Just as soon as I woke up, I thought I had an interesting little vision in my dream and just wanted to remember it that way. This triangle was some sort of trinket that was like the main thing you needed to collect. That was the goal of the game. This, I believe, was a rock that was used for throwing, and that was where that part of this game came from. And you can see sort of the visual similarities here. So kind of like a chain of islands with bridges or vines or something going across them, and rocks to throw to toggle mechanisms to get to goal objects. So this was kind of like what ended up becoming the template for the game. So yeah, kind of those two things tied together. Then a game I played called Legend of Grimrock 2 and 1, I think, yeah, to some extent does this. Often has these puzzles in it where you'll pick up rocks on the ground and throw them and land them on faraway pressure plates to toggle mechanisms. And I always really enjoyed those parts of those games. So yeah, just kind of put those things together into a game that's all about that stuff. So this jam did come with an optional theme of Magician's Hat, which, you know, as game jams tend to do, the theme was revealed on the day at the time that the jam started. And I thought of kind of trying to shoehorn that in somewhere, but it didn't strike any particular inspiration, and it was optional. So I opted just not to follow the theme for my jam game because I already had something in mind. So coming up with a name for this was surprisingly hard, as simple as it ended up being. It was called TPGJ2, Thinky Puzzle Game Jam 2. for the first little bit of its life. And then Rock Game is how I referred to it for a little bit until I finally settled on Throw Rock for the name. Naming things is hard. Like, it's kind of important, it's the first thing about the game that anybody sees. So I want to get it right. And I'm happy with the name I came up with, but it was a process to get there. Anyway, yeah, so this was the very first screen I managed to render for the game. So, starting points. Yeah, so I have a fairly robust and mature game framework that I've been working on for over a decade now, which I just kind of use for everything. So it's C language, set of libraries that has a renderer and file I/O and serialization and all sorts of goodies for just various aspects of game development. I call it STEM, as in like the stem of a plant. It's what supports the flower blossom that is your video game, I guess, is the metaphor. This tile editor is built with STEM. This audio lab is built with STEM. So it's just the basis for all of my work that I do. And I had put together for myself a template, like a little template project that I can just clone in Subversion and have basically like the skeleton of an application. It brings up a window. It has a renderer that doesn't do anything but is ready to draw the game. So just going from that to where's my directory that I was in? This one here. That to this was relatively quick. So here in the tile editor, I put together a little tile set with grass tile, wall tile, water tile, which you don't see in that screenshot because I didn't place any, and player. Yeah, so over here, this is the intro level in the tile editor. So yeah, I just have two layers here, one for player, scroll, rock. I think those are the only things that go on this layer, and the other for all the stationary tiles that make up the rest of the level. So yeah, and then I just put together a little renderer for that, sharing whatever code, like the same data structure that tile editor uses for representing this is also used in the game. So I kind of had a bunch of stuff ready to go, but also had a fair bit to invent during the game jam. This grass, I kind of minimized the number of like extra pixels in it since this and added an outline to the player sprite. The wall stayed the same, I think. Yeah, that looks about the same. Yep. Anyway, yeah, so went through some iterations, but where it started wasn't too extremely different from where it ended up. I just kind of arbitrarily chose 9x9 as my tile size because it felt about the right level of detail for what I wanted. And I like odd numbers because they have actual centers. So there is a center pixel in a 9x9 tile. Now, one cool thing that I like about this tile editor that I made is that tiles can go outside their boundaries. So like for this tall door block, it actually extends a little bit above the tile that it sits in, and that just kind of works. I had to do a little bit of interesting draw order stuff with it to make sure that stuff up here would be drawn behind the door, but it wasn't too big a deal. Mostly just kind of worked. And the scrolls go slightly outside their bounds. You can see if I look at the scroll sprite here, and that extends beyond the So this is the document bounds here. So just was really happy with this tool. This one held up extremely well. So yeah, I had been working on this tile editor tool for a while, and I wanted a project to help exercise it, and this was the perfect thing for that. Same thing for the audio editor, Audio Lab, this thing that I had been working on. This was a real good project for both doing the music composition portion of this here. I'll play this in a moment and go over it. And the sound effects. I spent the better part of a day just making sounds for all the things in the game that needed it, and that was just pure pleasure. It was one of the most fun days I've had in a long time. This program held up great for it. So yeah, I was really happy to be able to actually use these tools for real things and, see where their shortcomings are. I collected a page of notes for both of things that I do want to change in them, but They were good enough for what I needed for a week of game jamming. Yeah, anyway, so next steps, I had to put together some game mechanics, of course. Just kind of laid down these tiles here. These are pretty small, I'm sure, on the video, but you can see them okay. So yeah, I had the basic traversable tile, non-traversable tile, one that a rock can go across, but the player can't, player sprite itself, the rock that you pick up and throw, then pressure plates for mechanisms, you know, up, down. Oh, I had these looking different. I guess I went with a completely flat representation that fits in the tile. At one point, this was kind of elevated a little bit, and it went down when you pressed it. Then at another point, this one was kind of indented, like, oh, right, on Windows, my custom cursors don't work, so this will look a little weird compared to how I'm used to. Yeah, so I haven't shown my tile editor in a bit since the last devlog. It's kind of come a long way. That just ended up not looking very good, so I just went with that. Yeah, and then the mechanisms you can toggle, the rock in flight. Right, so the color palette here. I have this default color palette here that Tile Editor just shows at startup. This is the palette that Explorer on the 2GS used. These 16 colors. I stuck with it, other than cheating a little bit with this alpha channel here, so there's some transparency on the rock shadow. I kind of regret that a little bit because I think it held my graphics back. I would have made some different decisions, and I think the game would have looked better for it if I had gone outside that palette a little bit. Working with a palette constraint is fine. I didn't want to spend a bunch of time like messing with the color palette I was using here. These are very saturated colors. I don't get any like pastels in here mostly, other than I guess this one counts a few, but they're pretty limited. But you know, it's just part of the aesthetic. If I'd had more time, I totally would have done something different with my color palette, but it's fine as it is. It was an interesting constraint to work under. Anyway, yeah, so this tile editor is good enough for laying down the layout of like where the player starts, where the rocks are, where the blocks exist. But then there's a little bit of extra information like what these plates are wired to and what text is on these scrolls. And I didn't have an integrated solution in my tile editor for putting that kind of metadata in here, so I just did a quick thing and added a supplemental JSON file alongside each tile set that makes up the level. So just at this position, 7.3, okay, where is that? I have this position display over here. 7.3 is this scroll here. And on that scroll it says pick up / drop rock with action button. The font that I used was something I just happened to have around. I think I pulled it from Foresight Fight. I don't think it's very good, but it happens to be about the right point size to fit this much text on screen. It was what I had. Again, if I'd had more time, I would have drawn a different font, but it's legible. I think it's fine, but it could have been better. Anyway, yeah, and a separate thing for wiring. So at 14.8, which is here, so this pressure plate here, that is wired to toggle the block at 16.8, which is this door here. And yeah, you know, a plate can toggle multiple things. It can open, it can close, and that's everything that can go here. So it's either positioned with wiring with one or more toggle open or closes, or it's positioned with a scroll text. Those are the only things that have metadata in here. But yeah, that was a perfectly workable way to do things. You know, sometimes things get out of sync. I'd want to change my tile layout a little bit and decide this scroll needs to move over here, and then I have to come over here and update the JSON file to match. But it wasn't too much of a pain. That was a perfectly workable way to do these things. So for the undo system, because of course, being a stepping puzzle game, you gotta have one of those. You know, I can walk around, pick stuff up, throw stuff, mess up the puzzle, and I can just press the Z key or whatever I have it bound to undo. I can reset, I can undo through a reset. So I had a pretty good skeleton of an undo system for both Tile Editor and Audio Lab, because I've been doing changes and undoing them here this whole time. You know, I can do that, I can do that, I can undo, I can redo. Throw Rock doesn't have redo, but it doesn't really need it. Oh, have I been drawing in that layer? This is something that kept on happening over and over when I was editing this game, and it kind of drove me nuts. This is like top priority for fixing in Tile Editor when I come back to it. I'd open up this file. It would default to the topmost layer on it. I'd come here and say, okay, I need some grass somewhere, so I'd paint it on there. Then, I'd compile that, put it in the game, and I'd get an assertion error because there's stuff on this layer that shouldn't be. I just kept over and over drawing in the wrong layer because I didn't understand where I was. So kind of fell victim to my own workflow issues there. So that's one that I do need to work out. But other than that, it was pretty good. Yeah, so a little side note here. This is one of the only non-puzzle script games in the entire game jam. Like almost everybody else used puzzle script for their jam entries, which makes a lot of sense. Puzzle script is pretty great for putting together a thing like this in relatively little time. This could have been a puzzle script game. I don't know puzzle script, and I have my preferences, and they are to write applications with my own framework, which I like a lot. So this is the way that it came out. And I got some extra benefits from that. But I did choose my key bindings and behaviors and stuff to be reasonably familiar to puzzle script game players. The one big thing this is missing is a web version, and I'm working on that. I think within some amount of time I might be able to just run this in a browser instead of having to download an executable, which has its pros and cons. But yeah, web version may be coming if I can manage to get it to work. Anyway, so that's how the levels and tiles are put together. So for the sound effects, it really was just a matter of coming over here into Audio Lab and starting with, the idea of, all right, I need a sound for the player moving. Okay, I think I have an idea for that. So I would mess around with this. Let me see if I can recreate what I did. So I wanted something kind of like the Explorer walk sound here, but my own interpretation of it. That was made out of a pulse wave, not at that pitch. It was very low-pitched, very short, very short. I have crashed this application by making these things too short before. But yeah, basically short enough that there's one single cycle in it. Kind of like that. So that's reasonably similar to the what I ended up with. I did some kind of smoothing to make it a bit nicer and move this closer to the start because I want the clicky part of it to be have as little latency as possible when it starts playing. So like the player move sound, what's it called? Step maybe? No. What is it called? Move. Okay, that is not a pulse wave. What is that? Oh geez, we got this going on. Okay. There's why is that? Okay, Audiolab's behaving kind of weird. I guess I can't look at this right now. I had this bug and I fixed it. Did I not commit the fixes? Maybe I didn't commit my fixes. I probably didn't commit my fixes, and I'm on a different computer than where I fixed it. Okay, I guess we can't take the closest look at that. I'll fix that before I do an in-depth look at all the audio here. But anyway, yeah, I'm particularly proud of this sound here. That's the level complete sound. I just wanted to make it a really happy, sort of joyous kind of thing, and I think I nailed it. Just really happy with how that came out. And there are variations for that for different ways of exiting the level and other stuff like that, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, yeah, so just went through all the use cases I could think of for sound effects, made it here, and so one defining feature, I think, of this program that I'm real proud of, it doesn't really matter, but I just like it a whole lot, is the archive size. 729 kilobytes is the entire download, and that's for Windows. On Mac or Linux, it's even smaller. So this is an extremely compact program. So that's the release build, which is stripped, so it has just under 2 megabytes of code. Then here in the resources, the only assets that exist are this very small ping, which includes the font that I used. Oh wait, I have two separate... Oh, my tile map. Interesting. Okay, so the tile map itself is not part of that same texture atlas, but anyway, yeah, just imagine a ping that's basically this texture atlas of that set of graphics. And then one for each tile map. I'm not sure quite how I encode those, but anyway, so a little bit of binary data for the tiles, the font, each tile map that makes up the level, and then the sound effects, which is just so these are saved in binary format. I could save them in JSON and inspect what they look like. I've shown Audiolab files before. Let's see, if I wanted to do this, I would probably do it like this. I'll just show an example of what an Audiolab file looks like, not one that's actually used in the game, but this will be close enough, sure. So this one, for example, has a format type, tracks. This track has just a bunch of parameters. Basically, this is all the data that's fed into my synthesizer that I developed for Audiolab. Then when Throw Rock needs to play a sound, it reads that binary file, deserializes it, feeds it into the audio synthesizer, and gets out a PCM waveform that can be passed on to the audio hardware. Same principle with the music track. So music track here is just made up of a few patterns of notes. So that's sort of this main thing that plays the whole time. Oh, play. This music track, the first little bit of it just sort of came to me when I was trying to go to sleep, and I got out of bed and wrote it down, and then over the next day, as I was working on other parts of the game, I just kind of expanded it out into a long enough loop. I wish I could have found time to put multiple music tracks in the game or extend this out a little bit more, because like this 1 minute or so of music does get pretty repetitive as you go through it, but I think it does the job pretty well. It doesn't get in the way too much. It's reasonably fitting for puzzling, I think. Yeah, I'm happy enough with how this turned out. I'll let it play out the rest of the way. Yeah, and I'm gonna do a separate, I'm talking all over it, but I'm gonna do a separate in-depth video like this for all the audio in the game, and I'll go through this composition in more detail then, and all of the sound effect files. Yeah, so fun little thing. One thing I had to invent during the jam was a way to loop this music cleanly. Because like I said, so when Throw Rock needs to play a sound, it deserializes the parameter file from it, feeds it into my audio synthesizer, and gets a waveform out. So that means those trailing sounds there, that portion where this cursor was going beyond where the last measure is, those had to be overlapped with the beginning of this when the music loops in order to get a clean loop. And that was a technical problem I was aware of conceptually, but I had to actually write the implementation of detecting how long this was supposed to be, and in that little section where it loops, just adding the samples together. So that was a fun little technical challenge to solve. It was a little bit stressful to do it during the week-long jam, though, and I kind of wish I had solved that separately. But now I have the code, so it's there. Anyway, yeah, for an overview, I don't know what else I need to talk about here. So level design. There are 16 levels total in this game. And level design kind of ended up being the most time-consuming part of this overall. 16 levels, I think, is a pretty good chunk. It's, it's less than I hoped it would have been. I did manage to express all the concepts that I originally planned to within those 16 levels. With the mechanics that I have at play here, just barely. Like at the last minute, I was still scrambling to get levels built and get all the things I wanted to do with them in the game, right toward the end. So yeah, it was tight. Like level design was extremely enjoyable. Like I I had just a fantastic time putting these together. And thinking I'm going to do an in-depth video on the graphic design, the audio design, the level design, and the programming of this game. So each of those separately. So I'll go over every level, every sound effect, every graphic here, and maybe some of the rendering code and how that works. And then, just the programming aspects of this. So I think that's a pretty good overview. So once the jam, time limit was up, I got this released about an hour before the deadline. And, man, I had some... So I worked harder on this than I've worked on any project in quite a long time. I was, like, super crunching during the week of this. It was pretty enjoyable. The second day... I was working, a real long full day, and I was just feeling really bad and thinking, man, am I getting this old? Like, can I just not handle several hours of working on a video game straight without my body just totally breaking down? Unbeknownst to me, I discovered the next day that I was actually running a fever that day, and that was why I was feeling so bad physically. So that fortunately passed pretty quickly, and I was just in much better physical shape for the rest of the jam. But yeah, I worked right through not insignificant fever. Fortunately, there were no other, like, sickness symptoms or anything. Just a fever and the, aches and sleep troubles that come with that. But yeah, that one day kind of hurt a lot, and I was wondering about myself until I figured out why. But yeah, then, mad dash to the end, build the rest of the levels, get all the little pieces in that needed to get in, triage things, prioritize what absolutely needs to go in, and I've certainly made some post-release fixes, like a bunch of little tweaks to levels as breaks were found. Didn't have a lot of time to distribute this to people for playtesting, so I could find those before the time limit was up. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I'm happy with what I got during the jam time, and I've made a few little tweaks here and there and been real pleased with them. So I'll talk more in depth about all the other stuff in the game in coming videos. So yeah, I think that's a good overview, and we'll actually go through the game. Maybe I'll do the level design one next, just so we can actually go through the levels and see all the considerations and how they were built and the various things. But yeah, so definitely going to do some more of these, and it should be fun. So I'll see you then for that.